October 31st, 2019. As we had a quake yesterday of 6.5 in the Philippines. It was a kilometer south of Casanti. Now, normally when you see these size quakes, we've had large coronal opening in the surface of the sun. You can see the solar wind speed double and triple, get over 1,000,000 miles per hour. And as it impacts the shields of our planet, we see these quakes come in. I'll usually put out a quake watch. We didn't have that, but we did have what's called a coronal mass ejection. Now, the green wave here, I've got this paused, and what you're looking at in the center is the sun. The yellow dot is our planet. It's also, this is the inner solar system, so you got Earth, Mercury, Venus, and Mars in the red dot. And as this wave left the surface of the sun, it crossed our planet yesterday. Now, it rang the bell of our shields, and it's still ringing. But when that came across right there on the 30th, we had that quake, 1800 hours. It was starting to pass the Earth. But again, notice the width of that green plasma wave is wider than our planet. Okay. Anyway, on 18th, it had hit our shields, starting to pass by. Again, Earth is in the yellow dot. And guys, what this does, we call it CME tracker, coronal mass ejection tracker. It's linked on our website, but what it does is give us satellite information about what's coming towards our planet. It's part of the early warning system. Anyway, normally one that size would not matter. If it was a solar maximum, when our shields are very strong, very little impact. Let's switch to the magnetopause a moment. This is kind of your normal standoff point. At the bottom, you see where it says 10, 15. Well, 12 is where I have that line drawn. In calm solar weather, that's normally where it's at. Coming into yesterday, building up to the pressure at 1800 hours when it crossed the satellites, you can see it starting to compress the shields. The Earth is in that center white circle. The white half is the sun-facing side, and you can see the energy coming. But notice at 1500 hours, we're starting to get a collapse of the shields. Pressure is being put on. You can see it starting to burn off. And as we approach the 1800 hours as we are now, that is when the quake happened. Now, you're going to have two effects. You have a compression event, like we're seeing now. Again, here's your normal standoff around 12. And then you have an expansion event, guys, just like you hold a balloon, you push it in, puts pressure on it, but when you release it, you have the exact same amount of pressure, but going in the different directions, like a recoil. Anyway, you notice your timestamp. Again, we'll let this run into today some, and you'll see that there's still effects of that plasma wave as it crossed our planet. Again, we're dealing with grand solar minimum, and that means the 11.8-year solar cycle that we experience, which correlates with the orbit of the sun's binary twin, Jupiter. Each time for the last several, we saw a weaker solar cycle. And we're getting to the point now to where we're, again, getting in the grand solar minimum, but we will rise for 5 or 6 years, not as high as the last solar maximum, but that chart will rise, and we'll start to see coronal mass ejection, solar flares, and more sunspots build up. And that very well be what we're witnessing now, the beginning of the turnaround. Still, it's not supposed to happen until 2020, as far as starting to go back uphill in solar activity. We're not quite there yet. And you can see, looking at today's date, starting to come back out now a little later in the day. We're starting to get the shields back normal. So my point, I think, of the video is just be aware of this. As we turn and go the uphill cycle for the next 5 or 6 years, but the overall trend is downhill on our solar cycles. That has everything to do with events like the Maunder minimum, these winters or years without a summer that we've seen in the past. And this could be one of the largest dips that we've seen. There's reports that came out yesterday that the ice fields in the Arctic are expanding very fast. Now, that's not going to go over good with Jerry Brown and some people like that are blaming Trump for the wildfires now because he won't sign a global warming agreement, climate agreement. So that's his fault. But it's actually people like Jerry Brown, Gavin Newsom, that have squandered away the money and not took care of the utilities. Guys, you know that California, if you rated it now with third world countries, that the same thing, same checks come up. Infrastructure down. They're still without power in many places. Homelessness. Pollution in the streets because of homelessness. All of these. And California now is rated #1 in homeless people. So all the categories of a third world failed state are apparent in California. But they're blaming our president because his signature didn't stop grand solar minimum. Guys, when you're dealing with folks like that, it's kind of like watching the Democrats today with their phony impeachment. There's just no talking any sense into them. It's like a demonic possession, and that person really is not there. They have given over to the dark side, if you know what I mean. And that's what we're dealing with. But guys, again, I just wanted to update this. Events like this, as we start to go back into the next cycle, could become dangerous because our shields are still weak. This is a heads up. Be safe.